welcome to this month's Pello Perspective podcast. Now, I'm proudly here today with Chris Pennisi. We're here for the 11th episode, Chris. Looking forward to bringing you an overview of the market and sort of what's happening. End of financial year too, Chris, so we'll run through a bit about that. We've had some great results in the last few weeks, which has kind of sort of bucked some auction trends that were happening a month and two ago.
Sure.
So we'll go through all of that in a bit more detail. But How are you finding things over the last few weeks, just to kick things off?
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, there are some trends that we're seeing. I think the clearance rates have been a little bit lower, and some people have been a bit slower to adapt to what's happening in terms of, I think, a bit of a price change and those sorts of things. But we are seeing some really good opportunities for both buyers and sellers. And as you mentioned, there have been a couple of really good results in the last couple of weeks, and auctions where we're seeing really strong bidding. So, I think the perception is that, nothing's happening or nothing's selling from some people anyways. But we are seeing some really good pockets of, I guess, strong results.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good summary. I think overall, everyone wants to be, when there's an opportunity to be negative, everyone wants to be negative, right?
Sure.
So we live in the world of reality TV and soap dramas and all of the above. So it's no surprise that when you get a little bit of a negativity, it's sort of give people an inch, they take a mile, so to speak. But I don't think we're quite there yet. I do think there's signs that the market might still be coming down a little bit. There's inconsistency with some of the sales. I think obviously auction clearance rates, what's been really interesting in the last few weeks is they've gone from being consistently around that sort of 30 to 36% to last Saturday jumping up to 45%.
So it's a big jump.
That could be a sign that there's less stock on the market and people are making decisions, and that might sort of trend the market towards a higher clearance rate market heading into spring. So who knows? No one's got a crystal ball to sort of see where things are heading, right?
Yeah, and I think really when you look at whether it's data companies or the portals or any of those guys, the only now data they have is clearance rates. Everything else is sort of from settled data 3 months ago. Whereas I think what we see at the coalface is those changes. And I think, we might have even spoken about it on the last podcast, but we've been having conversations for weeks now about buyers saying that there's nothing out there. I'm not finding anything. I don't see too many new properties. Some people even looking one week, having a break the next week, and then coming back on the next week because they aren't seeing the stock that they would expect. And that's a big pitfall that a lot of people fall into when buying, is that prices have cooled a bit. So what's going to happen is all these properties are going to come to market at a discount of 10, 20 or more percent. And I might just wait for all that to come out. But what actually happens in areas like Ryde, where people have held their property for 5, 10, 15 years, is that they've actually had so much capital growth that they don't actually need to sell. So some of them are actually telling us, call me in 6 months when the market heats up again.
That's correct, yeah.
And so, I reckon as a buyer, there's kind of that finite window to get in before things sort of kick off again.
Yeah, definitely. It could be. I mean, taking us back to COVID times, like 2018, 2019, they were the challenging market. And then what we know is that the market on the sort of back end of that jumped by 35, 40% on the back of no stock because of COVID. The opportunities were all locked up and people couldn't sell. So the few people that did allow us in to do private one-on-one inspections with masks on and sanitizing and so on, all of those properties started to go crazy. Then we had closed door auctions, and then it went even crazier. So supply and demand is typically the catalyst for a lot of the price growth and decline. So I find that, we could be at the other end of that now. But I mean, a couple of interesting results over the last few weeks. You sold one at auction last weekend, which we'll talk about, 66A Windbourne Street in West Ryde. And I sold 114 Constitution Road in Meadowbank, which is right on that West Ryde Meadowbank border. Interestingly enough, both of them sold on auction day, but after the auction. So, we both properties had 4 or 5 registrations and some good bidding, and then passing in and then negotiating within 2 hours afterwards and both selling. So people are there wanting to make decisions now. It's not as if buyers are sitting on their hands and not bidding, not offering, not trying to get a deal done. It's really a case of making sure that they move quicker so that they're not missing those few that are out there now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think your auction at Constitution Road, which, you might want to add some more detail, but I think that's a really good example of what we we're just talking about. I don't think there's too many homes of that caliber in the area that have a granny flat that's walking distance to a station. And so for some of those buyers, and probably in particular the buyer that you sold it to, I didn't feel like they could just walk away from that property and say, okay, well, there's 6 more like it. And, we're going to buy something for cheaper that's better.
No, exactly. And I mean, interestingly enough, the last property that buyer bid on was actually 25 Anthony Road in West Ryde. So
Wow.
that one's the record sale price for West Ryde and sold 12 months ago for 4.75. They bid on that property, but in a much, much hotter market, they got completely outpaced at auction when that one went crazy. We were expecting that to go for 4 million or 4.1, ended up selling for 4.75. And they've gone through that process where they've basically seen a whole heap of properties sell, and they realized and saw that just slightly under 3.5 represented value in that area. So I think they had taken that long to look and find something that they bought at the right time, obviously, and realized that the value was there. But they also didn't dwell on the decision. They made quick decisions when timing was right.
And I reckon that's winning out at the moment. I saw that with Windbourne Street, which was similar. There was 4 people registered on the weekend. Obviously different price point, more sort of first home buyers or people moving out of an apartment into sort of a, first home. But being a 3-bedroom townhouse, it was perfect for a lot of young couples or small families.
Yep.
But yeah, we saw that in the end, the couple I thought who were going to buy it didn't end up buying it because they just sort of overthought it right at the end. And there was actually another family who didn't bid at all. And I think they were just sort of analyzing, well, when do we jump in? How do we do this? Or all those sorts of things. So the couple that ended up buying it took the bull by the horns and actually strengthened their position in the end and put a $10,000 bid on top of their final bid.
Yep.
And, to their credit, sort of said, take it or leave it. And after quite a while of discussion, as you mentioned, the owner decided that they'd move forward with that offer instead of waiting for others.
Yeah. Which is very similar to Constitution Road.
Yeah.
Constitution Road, we passed in at 3.21. Kind of slightly different negotiation. Like we sort of spent 2 hours going back and forward between the owner and the buyer. And like I said, to the buyer's credit, they were the one that made the biggest move. And we ended up selling that property just shy of 3.4. So it was over 180,000 higher than what it actually passed in for.
Yeah.
And I still think the buyer is going to be very successful over the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because they bought that property when 6 months ago, potentially it could have been sold for 3.7.
Yeah.
So we have seen that correction already happen in the market, and buyers that are out there now are making the swift decisions. They're actually seeing that 10 to 15%. They're going to see it in 5 years' time for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's probably the big reminder and moral of the story here is that you're buying property as a medium-term investment at minimum.
Yeah.
Most people who try to buy, and some get lucky in 2 or 3 years with a big price lift, but usually you got to hang on to it for sort of 5, 7, 10 years to get,
substantial growth.
Exactly. Decent amount of
That's
equity.
correct. So, and I think overall, like probably that shift that we're sort of seeing, like I don't think we're at necessarily the complete bottom of the market. No one's got a crystal ball to guess and estimate and all that sort of stuff. Like, and we're not in that industry. Like, we joked around a couple of times that if we could do that, we wouldn't be in real estate. We'd be on an island in the Bahamas somewhere on our yacht, parked in the ocean. But
definitely not working on Saturdays in the cold.
No,
that's for
exactly.
sure.
100%. I'd be definitely June, July, August, I'd be out of here. But the key is that, you can only go on trends. And that's what we've sort of become used to over the last sort of 15 years in real estate in this area, is just really working out what the trend looks like then and there. And the next sort of month and maybe even 2 months is probably going to be dictated by the current trend, which again, what we're seeing in the last 2 weeks is completely different to 5-6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, buyers were disappearing and not behaving as far as wanting to buy. They were sort of being rather opportunistic to their credit and seeing that the market was going down. Whereas, in the last 2 weeks, it's buyers are there to buy. So it's going to be a really interesting 2 months to see how this pans out. And I do believe that if there's no stock, if we are in a typical winter and combine that with the fact that prices are down 15% roughly, people are only selling if they need to sell, or like as an example, if they want to upsize, now's a great time to upsize because the $4 million prices have come down slightly more than the $3 million prices. So it is a great chance to bridge those gaps. So sellers that are selling are genuine sellers. And if you're out there now, I don't think you should be sort of trying to negotiate too hard, because that market has already sort of come to your favor.
Yeah. Well, and same thing as both those examples of sales. I think holding back too much, expecting that there's going to be no other competition. There are other people in the same boat that are ready to pull the trigger and ready to buy. So yes, negotiate hard, but don't sort of leave too much to chance, I think, is the message.
No, exactly. Well, Constitution Road's another good example of that. The underbidder at the auction, they left the auction saying to us, give us a call and let us know what the update is. And obviously we get sort of the highest bidder at the time to be the one to negotiate afterwards. And it's called first right of refusal. So they get to see the reserve and negotiate directly. And if we do a deal, we do a deal. That sold within 2 hours, and I saw the buyer at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the other underbidder at another property we showed off market, and he asked how the negotiations were coming along. And when I said that the property had been sold, it was pure disbelief. Like, it just didn't expect it to sell that quickly, and we'll see that more and more over the coming few weeks, I feel.
For sure.
So over the last financial year, we've sold 420 residential properties across our 3 offices, equating to $1.1 billion in sales. What an amazing achievement by the team.
Yeah, it's massive. And I mean, don't forget, that's 840 families that we've helped.
Yeah, that's a particularly rewarding stat. I think obviously helping more people along their property journey throughout a year across 3 key areas of Sydney. I think it's really challenging time through the market. We've had 7 or 8 economic changes, including wars and interest rate rises and petrol prices, obviously affordability, cost of living. Yeah. There's plenty of things that are happening. And then obviously we're now going through the government changes with self-managed super funds and so on. So to know that we've helped people navigate all of that and not just sort of sell the property, but a lot of those are families that are going to be moving into their property, enjoying that over the next 2, 3, 5, 7 years. It's particularly rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know, put you on the spot here, but any sort of moments that you think would, highlight the year, or people that you've helped, or situations?
Well, I think there's a few that have come to mind immediately. I think obviously we've got different types of clients is probably the best way to put it. Like we sold a townhouse at 1/2 Deacon Street in West Ryde for a client that's now sold, I think, 11 properties with us now over the last 7 years. And that's a particularly proud moment, because you know that if you get repeat clients in our business, it's something to be very proud of. Obviously, from an auction point of view and result point of view, I think we sold 2 duplexes about sort of 3 months ago at 25 Falconer Street in West Ryde. That was a really phenomenal deal because the market was adjusting at the time, and we sold one under the hammer in the morning for $2,710,000, and then to sort of negotiate the process on the one off market next door over a 5-hour period throughout the day, and call an auctioneer to come down to the property that afternoon, and just sort of creatively think out the deal while having the buyer on that journey and help the buyer out as well, with the owner knowing that we're doing the best to get the result for them, but also making sure that the buyer understood that it's not a magic trick. We are actually being genuine here and trying to help you. Just to be able to sort of creatively put that together was quite a phenomenal experience as well.
Yeah, for sure.
What about yourself? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, a couple of things that come to mind. I think from a sale point of view, one that my team's proud of are the duplexes at Boy Street, so 49 and 49A. I think selling one of those in the lead up to the auction of the other one for a little bit more, so 3,013,000 and then 2,985,000. That they're pretty strong prices for those. But I think what's been really rewarding, even over the last few weeks, one of the underbidders, there's something we've worked on a lot as a team over the last few years, but one of the underbidders has actually kept in touch with us. And even though they haven't bought yet, we've been speaking to them about even getting advice on other agents' properties. And I think for me, that's... it's a metric that it's hard to measure, but I'm always saying to a lot of people in my team that, well, how many people are reaching out to you for advice when there's kind of nothing in it for you? And I think that makes you feel like you're doing something right, at least if people trust you enough to call you up about another property and say, hey, give us your 2 cents. And
That's correct. I think it's one of the things that we work on with the whole team, like you said, is that help people when you don't sort of need anything from them, and then
sure,
at the end of the day, they'll always sort of come back when they need something themselves. So,
Yep.
Yeah, we've got a good mentality in the office around that, and I think it's helped with quite a lot of deals this year. Another way of looking at it is don't own the outcome.
Yeah.
Help the client for the right reasons, and then outcomes manifest themselves. So
sure.
I think if we just keep that rolling throughout the team, I think the team's on a really good track.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people can see when it's the other way around as well, when everything you're doing and saying is quite loaded around you wanting to get something done for yourself versus helping someone. So it's I guess good to see some of that coming to fruition.
Yeah, that's correct. So Chris, last episode we had David Anderson on, from the president of North Ryde Soccer Club. This weekend, North Ryde Soccer Club have their Back to North Ryde Day, which is a big community event where they get the local community involved and celebrate the soccer club. It's going to be a bit of fun down there at Gannon Park throughout the day. Free sausage sizzle, barbecue, beef brisket. There's a penalty shootout competition. So it's a great day for the local community to get down there. Are you going to get the kids down there this Saturday?
It depends what time we finish work, but yeah, sounds like a good day or good afternoon.
That's it. And their first grade team kicks off at 3:00. So if anyone wants to sort of watch a good first grade tussle, and could be a really good game down there at 3:00 at Gannon Park. On top of that, last episode we did speak about the World Cup. You've been watching plenty of the World Cup, Chris?
Plenty of it. Lots of early starts.
It's early and everyone's involved in it, isn't it? There's not one person that I've sort of met throughout the week that isn't talking about soccer, which is...
Sure. But I think the games also have been quality, some of them surprising, tense. I mean, Brazil's gone. I thought they would have gone a bit further, but...
Yeah, much further, yeah.
I think that was my tip for that, for the...
Yeah, Brazil. Yeah. Well, everyone thinks Brazil should always be at the pointy end, but they just didn't perform at those vital moments.
Sure.
I mean, even Japan was unlucky to get knocked out against them. So my picks are still in there, France, but yeah, I don't, at the moment, I think I'd love for an England win. I think just for England to be able to win the World Cup, that would be phenomenal, but also Messi getting another World Cup. There's a few good narratives there, and we're down to the final four now in the semis, and it's 4 big teams. Really looking forward to the final. I don't really care who's in the final. I think it's going to be an awesome game regardless.
I think out of all 4 of those teams, it's there's a lot of quality, and I think it's going to be tense, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Can't wait till next week when it's all on and see what the final brings.
For sure.
Thanks for tuning in to this month's episode of the Pello Perspective podcast. It's been great having Chris Pennisi on board. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts.